We have everybody on mute to make this process go a little more smoothly. We're going to wait until probably 11:01 to start this thing. We'll see if we can get, because people are joining as I'm speaking. So just hang on for another minute, but we're ready to go on our end. We're just waiting for a few more people to log on. So we will be talking to you shortly. All right, everybody. We are going to go ahead and start. We made sure we started at 11:01, so we started it right just a little bit late for you guys. Anyway, again, my name is Jay Hall, and I'm with Mobile Reach, and I'd like to welcome everybody to this webinar in our series of webinars. If you don't know, this is an ongoing series, and we'll get to what's coming up next very soon. Today, we are going to talk about how to implement effective mobile workflow in the enterprise. The process here is that I'm going to turn this over eventually to Nasrin Ansari, who has a lot of experience in the mobility space, 20 years. And but while we're doing this, you guys feel free to ask questions there's a question window and a chat window. Feel free to ask questions, and we'll try to get to those questions. We'll get to as many of them as we can while we're doing this, and hopefully we'll answer a lot of them as we go along. So we'll pause and we'll ask some questions while we're going, and then at the end we'll answer a few more questions, and then we will answer every question before we're done with you. So it'll all work out great. And that's pretty much the process. This should take anywhere between an hour and 45 minutes. We're going to try to keep it as short as we possibly can because you guys, I know that you enjoy these slides as much as I do, but this is just chock full of information. You guys are going to get, I guarantee you're going to get some nuggets out of this, stuff that you hadn't thought of, and stuff that'll really aid you in moving forward with your mobile strategy. So anyway, let's start this thing along. So this is a general, you guys probably know a lot of this stuff already, but mobility is a juggernaut. It is coming down the pike whether we want it to or not. We obviously want it to, but it's coming down the pike. I mean, you see the major portion of these Fortune 500 companies deploying these things. CIOs understand that this is about it's about the money of the thing. You know, they understand that this is a cost savings, and again, it's a juggernaut. It's exploding into business. It's exploding into business. The enterprise has become mobility in the enterprise has become very, very important, and you can see that this insider research survey, 80% of people say it's critical to the future success of their companies, and I'm sure you guys are feeling this, or you wouldn't be on this webinar. So this is about process. This is not, you know, click on a feature and all of a sudden, boom, I'm mobile and that's the deal. This is about a new process. This is revolution, not evolution. This is a new way to work, and the adoption of this is critical by the end users. Your focus has to be on what you can do to make these guys productive, and this is what the heart of what Nasrin's going to cover. She's going to take you through this process, and she's going to cover this. Now, I already have a question. There are some people who cannot hear the audio. I'm hoping if there's anybody that can't hear the audio, please let us know. So far, I only have one person. I'm hoping everybody else can hear it.
I think you have to call.
You probably have to call in over on the phone if you're trying to use VoIP, and there is a phone number that we sent out with the invite. That's what I would recommend. Anyway, I'm going to introduce it to Nasrin. I'm going to throw it over to Nasrin. She's got a boatload of experience She does consulting, she does speaking, she does all kinds of things at conferences, and I'm just going to turn it over to her, and she will take you through this this webinar. Masterin?
Thank you very much, Jay. I appreciate the introduction. So basically what we're focused on today, as Jay mentioned, enterprise mobility is huge. It's a big focus by CIOs all over the place and in all industries. And today we're going to focus on one portion of enterprise mobility, which is the process and the mobile workflow and how to make that more effective so that your mobile applications actually do what you need them to do. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when I go into the spotlight on enterprise mobility. I'll talk about what I mean when I talk about, when I refer to mobile workflow and the components of that. We'll go through a few examples just to make it more concrete for you, and some of our rules when we talk about creating and maintaining effective mobile applications for the enterprise. What does that mean? What are some of the things that we want you to make sure that you think about when you're implementing mobile apps for the enterprise? And then we'll summarize at the end, and as Jay mentioned, we will take your questions as we go along. We're keeping a monitor on the chat window so we know when things come up. So we'll make sure to do that. All right, so I want to differentiate what I call B2E, which is business to employee applications, from consumer applications and B2C, or business to customer applications. So starting with consumer applications, a lot of you may have iPhones, iPads, smartphones, tablets, and you go to an app store and you download apps for your personal, in your personal lives, for yourselves. And I kind of, categorize those in two areas. One being things that are fun and enjoyable, your social applications, your games, those are fun. And then maybe some personal productivity applications that you also download for scheduling, shopping, that type of thing. Those are consumer applications, and they've got a place, but that's not what we're talking about today when we talk about enterprise apps. So a lot of folks combine B2C and B2E applications together and call those enterprise apps, which is fine. But I want to differentiate between the two. So business to customer applications, let's say that you are a member, or you have an account at a bank. So you are a customer of that bank. That bank is going to want to provide applications to you as a customer to make it easier for you to access their features, to access your account and manage your account. Those are B2C applications. So those are applications that are based on customers wanting access, better access, or different access to information. Those are referred to customer-facing or external-facing B2C type applications. B2E applications are all about enterprise workers, so employees of the organization that happen to be mobile and that do their jobs while mobile. And what we're talking about here is trying to make those employees more productive. So one of the things that's important in terms of differentiation, is that B2E applications or enterprise applications are all driven by business needs. They have to be based on creating a more efficient environment, making employees more productive, providing benefits to the business such as higher level of awareness, etc. Secondly, it's important, as Jay mentioned earlier in the introduction, to note that B2E mobile applications are process improvements. They have to make the organization more productive, better in some way or another. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to implement a mobile application. And so given that, in order to be successful, the enterprise application, it must improve the process, again, otherwise there's no point in incorporating it. And it must actually be used, which drives us to the user adoption piece. It's a requirement, as you change processes in your organization to make things better, it's imperative that the users actually switch to the new process. Okay, so now talking about mobile workflow, what do we mean when we talk about mobile workflow? Well, your mobile user does work away from his or her desk. And while he's away from his or her desk, what he's doing is performing, what we call mobile workflow. And that includes the tasks. So a mobile user has a task that he has to perform, which defines what it is that he wants to accomplish. And then there's a process to follow in terms of fulfilling that task. And that's, step 1, step 2, step 3, how do I get this task completed? And then in terms of information, in order to do a task, the mobile user is going to need information that is owned by the organization or the environment. And I call that reference data. So it's important that the mobile user have access to information that he needs to complete his job, and that during the process of completing his task, he's also going to be capturing information. For example, if he's doing a survey, he's going to have to do, reference data might be the questions that he needs to answer, and the data he's capturing are the answers to his questions. And then that data input gets pushed back into the enterprise application. And so that's really what we talk about. The mobile workflow is what happens when the mobile user is away from the enterprise, and then there's interaction between the enterprise environment and the mobile user that involves both process and data. So here's just a picture of what I just described. And the top part is the enterprise environment, where you've got the application that's running, the database, and then you've got the mobile environment. And let me put this into context by talking about one of our customers, which is eBay. So eBay uses a mobile reach product to manage the servers in their data center. And so when the user is in their data center, that's when the user is mobile. And when they're back at their desk, that's when they have physical access to their application. So what eBay does with its folks, because they're in their data center, they did not have wireless access in all of their data centers. Some of them they actually do. But in all aspects of the data center, what they do is they cache information about the servers from the enterprise environment. That's the reference data that they need to capture. They push that onto a barcode scanner. Then they walk through the environment in the data center, and they track information that's changing if servers are moving or they're being upgraded, whatever's going on in the environment. The mobile user is capturing that on the barcode scanner. They scan the tag of the server, and then they track the information or the change that's going on with that server. And then at the end of the day, or throughout the day, if they have wireless capability within the data center, then they're going to synchronize that with their back-end database to make sure that the information in the back-end database remains timely and up-to-date. And so that completes the circle. You'll see that information flows out of the enterprise environment to the mobile user, and then back into the back-end application at the end of the day. And that's really how we define mobile workflow as both process and data management. And so what I'd like to do now is just this. So far we've talked a lot about the process, about data. I'm just going to make it a little bit more concrete by talking about a few examples. So one example might be a field survey. If you've got field technicians that have to go into an environment out in the field to manage machines or equipment that your company uses, perhaps they have to go out and do an inspection or preventative maintenance on a regular basis. And when they do that, it's very useful for them to perform those tasks using a mobile device. So they'll go out into the field, they go to their equipment or the machine that they need to perform an inspection on, they pull up the survey, they fill it out, report any problems that have been detected, and then they're good to go, and then they bring that back to their environment. So one of our customers, Pioneer Natural Resources, this is a very good example of something that they might do with their mobile workers. Asset equipment and receive. Just about every environment has equipment that they have to use to make their employees productive. And a lot of organizations have a receiving dock or receiving location where they receive assets into their environment. So another one of our customers that I'll use an example here is FDIC. They've got a central location where they receive assets, and they use our product to manage their IT assets in their environment. And so what they do when they receive assets in, they want to know immediately that that asset was associated with an actual purchase, so they can correlate with their accounting system that the asset's been purchased and yes, it has been arrived and I've got it on my books. And so that's the first step is to validate that item with the purchase order. And then what they also do is they track it within their asset management system. And they want to track that asset through its life cycle. And so they need to create an asset record for this new item that's entered their environment. And they affix an asset tag to the asset, and then they track it throughout the environment. A third example is work order. And this is sort of a generic application. One of our customers, Canon, uses this type of application in their environment as well, but it's kind of a generic or sort of an all-purpose type application. You can think of a lot of different ways to use this, but folks that have work orders or things where they need to send people in the field and perform an upgrade, perform an installation, that type of thing, they create work orders to track the task that needs to be performed and assign that to a particular individual. That individual receives the work order, and they can receive the work order on a mobile device, take that into the field with them, know where they need to go to perform the upgrade or the task, review information about that work order, perform the job that needs to be done, and then track the status or the results of that, of the work that they have performed, save that and push that back into the system. So those are just some examples. And here's a chart that kind of breaks those examples up into tasks. So you see each of the different workflows, the survey, the asset received, the work order, there's a task or a goal associated with each one of those. And there's a process. So for example, with the field survey, you want to identify the equipment so you can open the correct survey, answer the questions about that item, identify any problems that may have been a result of the answers that you answer to those questions, and then complete the survey. And in terms of reference data, there's data that you need to pull out of the application in order to perform the survey, and then there's input that you capture during the process that needs to get pushed back into the application at the end of the day or when the survey is completed. And you see we've got the same breakdown for the asset received example and the work order example here as well. So those are some examples of some completed applications, and it all seems very straightforward, but it's really important that when you're coming up with the tasks that your mobile users need to perform, it's really important that you think about the challenges in the mobile environment. And that's what we're going to talk about here, because this really is where kind of the rubber comes to the road in terms of building an effective application versus just something that that you may think does the job but really has some challenges and doesn't make your users as productive as they could be. So first of all, in a mobile environment, there is the risk of losing network connectivity. So if your application is built so that you're dependent on a network connection to have access to either reference data or functionality, the process, steps during the process, then you've got the risk of losing that in an environment where you may lose connectivity or where connectivity may be very poor. Okay, so that's a challenge in a mobile environment. Another challenge in the mobile environment is that you don't have the luxury of sitting at a desk with a full-size keyboard and a full screen. So the information that is presented in a mobile application needs to be catered to a smaller device, a phone or a tablet that doesn't have a full-size keyboard. You may have to tap the screen to enter information. It's got a smaller screen, it's got a smaller keyboard, and it's not as easy to use that in terms of entering information. So you may want to be creative about data input. You may want to be creative about how information is presented to the users. Also consider that with these smaller devices, there's a limitation in terms of power, how long they'll stay charged. So you want to think about that. You want to make sure that you're not putting features into your mobile application that are going to quickly drain the battery if the user is going to be out of a place where they can actually charge their phone or their device for some period of time. There's limitations in memory, so you want to make sure you're not putting so much information on the device that it slows it down because it's using so much memory. And then finally, another aspect that's very important is to understand that mobile users are not sitting in a relatively quiet office with a desk and a very consistent environment. It could be an environment that is exposed to the elements. Thinking back again about my customer Pioneer that has to go out and service equipment out in the elements. So you have to think about, it could be dark, it could be bright, it could be loud. There's almost assuredly going to be interruptions throughout the day. So you also want to think about this in terms of the environment not being very consistent, and they're having the risk of interruptions and certain things that may be distracting for the end user.
So Nasrin, this is Jay. I'm talking to people all the time, and when I'm looking at all this, I'm thinking, my connectivity is pretty good. As far as limitations of the mobile device and all that stuff, why not just do a web app? I mean, why not? Why can't I just do a web app and get this accomplished?
That's a good question. And certainly web apps are appropriate in certain situations. I think the area where web apps are good and successful is that, as Jay mentioned, they don't use a whole lot of memory on the device. You already have an application that's written there, the browser that web apps run in. However, the area where web apps are not quite so good is in the network connectivity range. Web apps typically have to go back to the server to pull down information, and you may think that you have good network connectivity, and certainly network connectivity is getting better all the time. Again, back to my Pioneer customer, they've got sites all over the place, and many of their sites are away from network connectivity, and it's often the case that mobile workers for corporations have to work in remote environments where their connectivity is not very good or it's non-existent. Even eBay and their data centers, they did not have connectivity in their data centers. They were required to work offline. A web app isn't going to be able to do that for you. But even when you do have network connectivity, and this is another thing to think about, is that even when you do have network connectivity, the trips that go back to the server and back, that really slows down the application. And you can't really control when that connection is going to be good and fast and when it's not. I know that personally, even when I'm sitting at home, I know that lately over the last couple of weeks, for some reason, the connectivity has gone down, and I get frustrated. All of us have experienced this where you're sitting there looking at your phone and you watch that little circle go around and around going, okay, what's going on here? What's up with my connectivity? And even a 10-second delay can seem like forever for a mobile user. And in your personal time, that may be okay, but when you're at work, you know what, that's not okay. So it's really, really important, and I can't really get this across enough, that your user experience is good and it's effective, and that your user's not sitting around, tapping their fingers, because one of the things we talked about was distractions here, right? If your user is getting distracted left and right, it's important that they can do their job as quickly as possible, and connectivity can be a huge detriment in that aspect. So again, I think there are situations where web apps may be very effective. I think in the B2C type environment where you've got customer-facing applications, that's a very good environment or good place to put web apps. But one of the things that we're going to cover in a future webinar is why I think and why we think that native applications are really best suited for the enterprise environment and enterprise users. And we'll talk about that in more detail in the next webinar. But does that answer your question?
Yeah. That's great. That's fantastic.
Okay. So moving into the rules. So now we're going to cover some of the things, the guidelines that we at Mobile Reach put forth when talking about implementing mobile applications. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is that the functionality and the process involved in the mobile application must absolutely be aligned with the needs of the business. So we're not building applications. There's a lot of benefit to the cool factor, to features of the device. Certainly, things like audio control, being able to control an application via voice. That's very, very effective, and there's reasons behind it. But the bottom line is that your mobile applications have got to provide benefits to your business, whether that's in increased productivity, increased efficiency, better information, more timely decision making. Those are the types of things that drive you to create, build, maintain, and support mobile applications for your enterprise users. And to that end, user adoption of the mobile app is a requirement. It's not optional for your enterprise workers to choose to use the mobile app or not. It's a requirement that they actually do use it. And so therefore, making it easy to use, intuitive, straightforward is very, very important, because if it's not easy for them to use, they're not going to be able to use it well, which is going to reduce the effectiveness of the application. As we mentioned, as Jay questioned in the last slide about the connectivity, the mobile application should not be dependent on a network connection, and that's so that the user can complete their task in a timely fashion. So it's, it makes sense that there might be a certain amount of functionality in your application where you may optionally want to go back to the server. For example, you may want to query the server to pull back information within your application, but it's got to be an optional feature, not something that's required. Anything that's required for meaningful usage in the application has got to be cached onto the device so that you can run it without requiring a network connection. And finally, the user interface needs to be very simple and uncluttered, as simple and as uncluttered as possible. And there's a balance here between presenting information to the user that's going to be important for them to be able to see and have access to, and making the screen simple. So it really is an art. Building a mobile application that's effective is an art, and the more you do it, and the more feedback you get from your end users, which is a crucial part of the building mobile applications puzzle, is user feedback. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. And we at Mobile Reach have a lot of experience at doing this, and we can guarantee you 100% that the simpler you can make the application, the better you're going to get. And this kind of goes back to that challenge that I spoke about in the last slide about the distractions in the environment. You really want to make it as simple as possible so that the distractions that the user is invariably going to have don't affect their ability to be effective and inputting information correctly into the environment. And then finally, it's obviously, this is kind of a given in my experience, it's a given that mobile applications must be secure. You must secure the data, both while it's residing on the mobile device and while it's transferring over the air. And you also must authenticate and make sure that the user that's using the application is authorized to do so. So that's critical. You're going to see that on top of every CIO's list.
Yep, Master, this is Jay again. On almost every person that we talk to talks about security, and they even say stuff like, well, security is such a big issue, we can't do mobile. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't know if there's anything else to address there,
sure.
but I just know that it comes up every single time.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good question, and I think, obviously security is very important, as I mentioned, and the application has to protect the data, has to protect and make sure that the user using the application is authorized to do so. Certain situations, data is more sensitive than others, but the bottom line here, we're talking about a process change, a process improvement. Your mobile workers are already today in the field doing a job, and let's go back to that. Let's go back to the survey example. So you've got your mobile user out in the field performing a survey. They're capturing information. How are they doing it today? If they're not using a mobile device to capture information, they are using pen and paper. So they're writing information down on a piece of paper. They're checking things off. They've got a printout. In the asset example, maybe they're doing an asset inventory. They've got all their assets listed on this piece of paper that they carry around with them. So think about exchanging that paper with a mobile device and having information in an electronic form. That's a step up in security. I mean, it's a lot easier to lose a piece of paper or to get it in somebody else's hands that shouldn't be looking at it. Another good example is a hospital environment where you've got patient information. We all know how sensitive that is. You're actually increasing security by replacing those paper forms with electronic forms and having that data being stored in a very secure manner on the device. So you can look at it both ways, but I think overall it's a step up. Certainly security has to be addressed within the mobile application, but you got to think about what you're doing here. You're replacing an existing process and you're actually making it better.
That's good.
And then again, the bottom line here is that this may not be true for all mobile apps, but for enterprise-based business mobile applications, they are process improvements, and you need to look at them that way. You need to look at what is it that my users are doing today, and how do I make the process better. And so in terms of what we do here, we're addressing two things. We're addressing inefficiencies in terms of data and inefficiencies in terms of process. So in terms of data inefficiencies, as I mentioned before, your existing users, they have to access reference data, they have to capture data in the field, and they have to put that information back into the system. Without a mobile solution, they're doing all of that today, but just not in a very effective manner. They're using paper printouts, they're capturing data manually by hand, the data that they're putting back into the system is subject to all that human and manual error, and so overall you've got suboptimal data integrity in your back-end system that all your decision makers are working from, and that that causes problems in all sorts of ways in your environment. So the whole driving force for bringing in a mobile solution is to improve that and make the system more accurate and better overall, more productive for the business. And so incorporating a mobile solution, your reference data can be more consistent, you cache it onto the device, you've got it there in an electronic format. Whenever you have connectivity, you can update it so you've got real-time updates as much as possible on your device to keep the data that you're accessing in terms of reference information up to date, timely, and there for you when you need it. In terms of data capture, one of the good examples here that I think about is IT asset management, asset inventory when you're in the field, or field services where you can use a barcode scanner to scan information. Think of how much more accurate it is for you to scan a barcode and pull an asset ID or a serial number off of a barcode than it is for you to type it in, try to type it in with your fingers. And certainly there's a good chance of error there. So being able to capture information in a automated way. Another example is, let's say you are inspecting a machine and you see a problem, something's broken on it, you can take a picture, take your mobile device, take a picture of it, attach that picture to a record, and instead of trying to describe what you see with words on a piece of paper, or even in a system, you can take a picture and you've got all right there, and everybody knows that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So you've got that. You can do validation when you're capturing data. If you've got that smarts built into your mobile application, you can validate data on the spot. And then, once all is said and done, the data that's getting input back into your system is going to be a much higher quality, and what you end up getting there is just the ability for your business to operate more smoothly because it's operating off of data that's more, that has a higher level of integrity. And then the second piece of increasing efficiencies in the environment is all about the process. And so in terms of process, think about sending somebody out to do a job without a mobile solution. They're out on their own. There's a lack of accountability. You can't really control how they do what they're doing. They just need to go out there and capture information. The information that is captured is dependent on how the user itself, each user could be very different in terms of the information that they capture and how they do it. So you can't, as they're going through the process in the field, you can't validate information on the spot. You can't ensure that data is being input or captured in a consistent format. So there's a lot of chance for error, and not being able to control the process gives you very little ability to make improvements on the process. So incorporating a mobile solution allows you to define and implement a process for your mobile users. It allows you to guide them through a process. It allows you to require them to input data at certain steps during the process. It allows you to automate things such as, for example, if you're out in the field and you're capturing information, you can use GPS to say, okay, the user was at this particular location. You can capture that via GPS and the user doesn't have to enter that. You can automatically timestamp certain events. As the user is performing certain tasks, it can be automatically timestamped, and you know exactly when and where it occurred without the user having to do anything. So those are types of things that can be incorporated into a mobile solution. Also, you've got a consistent process that you have defined. You can measure how effective that process is as you make changes. Every user has to follow that same process. So you get a consistency in terms of the process, in terms of the data entry, and that gives you an ability to improve the process going forward because you have a baseline there to work from.
So a couple of things come to mind. One is that this process. I was just thinking about people that are not using a mobile app and how one person could be doing things very, very quickly and just kind of slacking off, if you will, and then the other person could be working the whole time. So I see accountability here. The other thing that I get all the time is that, and I talk to people on the phone all day long, is that almost everybody talks about the process. And nobody really, especially because they're thinking about ROI and money and how can I do this more efficiently, they all talk about the process, but most of the people don't talk about the data integrity.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you have anything to say about that, but they're, you know.
Well, that's a good question. I think that when we think about mobile applications and the benefits of mobile applications, a lot of people do get the fact that mobile applications make users more efficient and more productive. And I think that's pretty natural. You know, you've got a device that helps you input data more quickly. It helps, you know, to improve the process, certainly. But in a lot of cases, data integrity is often overlooked, but it's actually very, very critical. And one of the areas that we do a lot of work in is asset management. We have quite a few customers that use Mobile Reach products to perform asset management. And that's one area, and it's not the only area, certainly field services as well. There's a lot of areas where data integrity is of the utmost importance. And it's critical that, you know, the automated data entry, data validation on the spot allows your users, allows you to reduce the amount of human error that gets incorporated in the system, that reduces the integrity of your entire system and increases the chance of bad decision making in the environment. And so really it is all about business benefits here. What I'm going to jump to now is just a couple of examples. This is an example of sort of a work ordering system where we've got problem tickets. This screen that I'm showing you is running on an iPad, and it's one of the applications that we built for our customer, and it's about tracking problems in the field. And so what you see here, and what I'm going to talk about is some of the things that make this application easy to use. So you see that what we're listing here is these are all the incidents of the work order items that are assigned to me. And so you'll see that they're listed under a tab up here at the top called My Incidents. There's another tab that's in the background called My Group Incidents. So if I had nothing in my list and I wanted to pick up something that was in my group that hadn't been assigned to any particular individual, I could go to that tab, My Group Incident, open up one of these records and assign it to myself, and then it goes into my queue and I can work on it. So this basically is my queue. I have everything that I need to do right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the next slide, which I believe shows the details of one of these. Oh, but before I get there, you'll also see that they're color-coded. So I can immediately see which things need my attention. I need to focus on these red items right up here at the top. They're at the top and they're colored red to get my attention. And then then they kind of go down in severity. So the blue ones are the ones, if I didn't have anything that was red, I would focus on the blue, then I would focus on the black, then I would focus on the greens. So that just kind of shows you that I have a visual cue here on what I need to work on. So if I open up a particular item, you'll see that there's a variety of information. Now, because we're looking at an iPad, I can put quite a bit of information on the screen and still keep it relatively easy to use and manageable. But you'll see that there are 5 different tabs up top. There's information, there's details, work info, assets, and resolution. And what we try to do here is put the most critical information up front, and information in the details, the things that I need to do, and then stuff that may not apply to every record is going to go a little bit later in kind of the later tabs here. But because I'm not using a full screen, I do have some limitations on what I want to show, so I want to break it up here into 5 different tabs. You'll also notice on the screen that information is grouped in different areas. All my status information is put here in this, the right top screen here, so I know this is where all my status information is. You're also going to notice that there's a couple of buttons on the screen. One over here says Select Template. What that will do, if I press that button, it's going to go ahead and fill out information on the screen based on a particular item. So it might be that I'm creating an incident, and that incident is has to do with a printer being broken, for example. So then I would hit the Select Template button and select the item that says Printer Broken, and it would fill information out for me so that I don't have to type everything in. You'll notice down here in the bottom right that there's a button called Assign to Me. And so what I would do there is, if I were in that group that I mentioned to you before, I open up a group ticket and say, oh, this one isn't very far from me. I'll go ahead and I have the skills to work on this work order. I'm going to go ahead and assign it to myself. I'll go into that record and I'll press this button, Assign to Me, and what it does, it fills out all the information down here. It fills out my support company, it fills out my organization for me, it fills out the group that I belong to, and it fills out my name, which happens to be App Admin. And so just by pressing a button, I can fill out all the data in the screen that's associated to me. Another thing that I want to point out here, if we look at the status up here at the top, what you'll see highlighted below is I'm actually in process on this screen. I'm actually in process of setting the impact field to extensive widespread. And you'll see that you've got that at the bottom of the screen, you've got that drop list of all the different items that I can choose. So instead of having to type in the impact, I just select an item here, and I know that extensive widespread is the most impactful, and that's the situation that I'm working on, so I'm selecting that item. So even though it is quite a busy screen, you'll see that the information is laid out in a very well thought out format. So here's another example. What I did is I put a similar application on the screen to show, just to show you what it might look like on an iPhone or a phone. So again, because the iPhone is much smaller than the iPad screen, you need to put less information on the screen at any given time. But you'll still see that the information is laid out in an organized fashion. There's more tabs across the top. You can't see them all here because we've blown the screen up a little bit, but you can see that I'm focused in on the customer. There's a tab about the customer, and I've got the phone number. I can select that phone number and immediately go in and make a phone call. I've got information about where the company is. I can also do things like I could have a map here where I could select and it would take me to a map and show me exactly where this customer is. That's not shown on the screen, but that's certainly something you could do to make the application even more effective. And so this just gives you an example of being able to see a screen in a slightly different fashion, and how you really need to know what device or devices you are building for, so you can design the screens so that they suit the environment and the devices that your users are going to be using. Okay, so now getting into the business benefits. Again, we keep talking and going back to the fact that applications are driven by the business, and the business benefits are very, very high with implementing effective mobile applications. And the most, the most prevalent or the most significant benefit that you'll receive is making your workers more productive. And that means making your processes more efficient so that they can do their jobs faster. Having data at their fingertips so that they've got knowledge every step of the way. One of the earlier slides, you may have seen that prior to having a mobile solution, somebody might need information, they don't have it at their fingertips, they've got to call back to somebody at the office or call the help desk and say, I'm looking at ticket ABC and I'm not quite sure about where where this broken printer is. I'm in the printer room and I don't see a broken printer, that type of thing. Having the data at your fingertips is really going to make your workers more efficient at being able to get their job done. Having a user experience that's easy to use is going to make them enjoy using the application more. It's going to make it more, it's going to make them quicker at using it. And the final thing is consistency, and I've highlighted that as being important because having all of your mobile users perform tasks and enter information in a consistent format actually helps you be able to generate reports, helps you be able to pull information out of a system, pull reports, and characterize that information, consolidate it so that you really can see how effective your users and your processes actually are. And then secondly, data integrity. We talked about how important that is, having data up to date and making sure that the data is validated wherever and whenever it can be. And the bottom line for that is that that's going to really assist you in making better business decisions in all areas. And so the bottom line here is that you're able to do more with less, and you're able to have better insight into your daily operations and able to make better decisions throughout your business. And we talked a little bit about, I just wanted to address ROI because we mentioned, as you get to the point where you want to incorporate a mobile solution and you may be the person that will benefit the most from it, but you've got to justify it upwards to the decision makers. Be assured that implementing a mobile solution will have a real concrete business benefit. Again, that's the only reason why you would incorporate a mobile solution to start with. So in terms of figuring out the ROI, remember that you are replacing an existing process. So you need to analyze your existing process and assign a cost to the inefficiencies that are involved with your current process, because those are the things that you want to remove. You want to remove the inefficiencies and add some benefits there. So design and define a new process around mobility, and then estimate the gains that you're going to receive from that solution, and that's really your benefits that you're going to receive, and you can put a cost around that. There's a lot of ways you can put a cost around that, whether it's in efficiency gains, productivity gains, integrity gains. It's all there, and it's all quantifiable. And then, again, the new process must be an improvement. Just determine what it will take to implement your new process. There may be a cost to the implementation, a cost to the operation and the upkeep. You want to make sure you understand all of that. And then your ROI is simply the ongoing savings, the initial and ongoing savings, minus the initial and ongoing costs that it takes to implement the solution. And, in our experience, we've been doing this for 12 years, implementing mobile solutions. And there's always been a focus on ROI, as well there should be. But in my experience, I have rarely seen implemented a solution that takes longer than 6 months to see ROI. And then that ROI is just ongoing after that. So that's just to give you some guidelines on the ability to justify the investment is there. Okay, so in summary, enterprise mobile applications, to differentiate those from consumer applications, as well as customer-facing business applications, which also sometimes fall under that enterprise umbrella. But what I'm talking here about is employee-based, mobile worker-based enterprise solutions must be driven by business needs. They must involve process improvement, and they must be used. And so those are the three critical components of business to employee applications. In terms of business needs, you should see an improvement in efficiency, an improvement in productivity, an improvement in data integrity, an improvement in information availability or access. All of these things represent business improvements that are validated by incorporating a mobile application. You should see process improvement, whether that improvement is in speed, accuracy, completeness, consistency. All those are improvements in the process that are going to help benefit your business. And then in terms of user adoption, again, it's critical. I've since day one, and I've been in mobile computing for 20 years now, as Jay mentioned. I've always been focused on user adoption and user experience, and I think it's critical, sometimes overlooked. It's a very critical piece to the puzzle. And again, you'll see that there's certain organizations that are farther along the mobile maturity curve than others, and you'll note that the farther along they get, the more focus they end up putting on the end user and the mobile end users, because they'll see that they'll implement a mobile solution, it doesn't get used, it's not successful, they have to throw it away and start over. And so eventually you learn that starting over, you always want to begin with the end user. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it back over to Jay.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Nasrin. I'm just going to go over a couple of things really, really quickly. So the issues are that, you have to figure out what you want to do. You have to figure out your strategy. Is this going to be aimed internally, externally? Is it going to be aimed at customers or external users? Is it a marketing, thing? And as Nasrin covered, we are focused. We handle the internal business. We save companies money. We make companies more efficient. And once you have that strategy figured out, which direction you're heading, you really have to address the business needs. And she founded on that. It's how can I make this business more efficient? How can I make my workers more efficient? How can I make them more accountable? When she talked about these workers working in different ways with paper, and some people are very good and some people are very fast and some are slow. If I can make them accountable, if I can see how quickly things are doing, I can implement new processes and I can track those processes. And then the user experience, which is really, really important here, because if I don't like the way it works, then I'll go back to my sheet of paper and I'll enter the data later and you'll never know the difference. And so the user experience has to be really, really sound, and it has to work. And Nasrin covered all of that stuff. This was very, very heavy on information, and we did that on purpose. We didn't do any product demos or anything like that because this was really about communicating information and how we can help. If you're interested, we will be happy to provide you with a demo or more information. But basically, we have the ability to give you the ability to rapidly create, deploy, and iterate apps, and those will be native apps. And it's write once, deploy across platform. You can deploy across multiple backends, multiple front ends, and you don't have to write a single line of code. So that is how we can help. I want to address one of the things she said, which is the ROI, and this may or may not be interesting, but everybody that I talk to finds it interesting. And that is a very simple, this is really simple, ROI, and it has to do with process, not about data integrity. Data integrity is extremely valuable, especially in healthcare, finance, government, any vertical where the data is worth a lot of cash. But as far as the process goes, if somebody is moving around and they're wasting going back and forth to their desk, getting in their car, going back and forth, if you can save them 5 to 6 minutes a day in a 22 workday per month environment, that's 2 hours. 2 hours a month, and 2 hours a month, if your loaded cost of workers $50 an hour, 2 hours, it's $100 a month you'd be saving. That at a minimum. Most mobile workers are much more expensive than that. But if you have 30 or 40 mobile users and 50 mobile users saving $100 a month, just that alone is $5 grand a month. In 6 months, that's $6 grand, that's 30 grand in savings. And that's just on a very, very simple ROI. Actually, the ROI skyrocket, but I just thought I'd throw that out because I do that and people go, wow, 5 minutes. My guys are going to save at least 20. So multiply that times 4. Now we're talking about 120 grand in 6 months. So anyway, that is pretty much the bottom line. We can help by allowing you to do all this very, very quickly, and we also have people like Nasrin in house who can aid you. And that is pretty much it. Let's see if we have any questions here. Which is better? Okay, should you concentrate on different back-end apps to mobilize CRM, asset, database, or by business unit, sales, field, warehouse? Where should I begin? So, Nasrin, I think the deal is that when I'm looking at mobility, usually I have a very simple, very straightforward thing in mind. But what do you see out there? What do you see people doing? You know, is there a place to begin? Is there a place to expand to?
Yeah.
Just talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think for a lot of folks, you know, as I mentioned, as Jay mentioned as well, enterprise mobility is a change in the way you do business. It's not just a feature. It's not just something that you throw in there. It's something that you have to build a strategy around. We talk about this sometimes as the importance of a mobile strategy. You have to think about how it's a complex task, and it can be overwhelming for a lot of people. So it's a good question. Where do you start? Do you start by mobilizing a particular application, or by a particular business unit? I think that's the question here. And you know, honestly, it could be either, but I would say that you want to start with the area that you're going to either see the most bang for the buck, or where you can really, something that's contained, and usually that's a user group. So I would take a user group that you want to provide a solution for. Provide one solution to take, you know, start off with one user group, understand where their inefficiencies are, build them a solution. You may have 5 solutions you want to provide for them. Start off with one. Get that in place, get some feedback, get your feet wet with it, and then build another one for that same group. And then, you know, what you're going to find, and as I mentioned, I think in my summary, as folks move up the maturity curve, they realize how important it is to involve the end users. And one of the things that Jay alluded to here was some of the capabilities at Mobile Reach that we have here is a tool that allows us to build and allows our customers to build native applications very quickly. And the benefit, the side effect of that is that you can build an application, put it out there for your end users, and get feedback from them and iterate through, you know, in a way very similar to agile development, where you push out an application, allow your users to use it, get feedback, and refine it. And I would say the right way to approach enterprise mobility is to pick one application in one area first and learn. Learn what your users like and dislike, what works for your environment, because every environment is a little bit different. Everybody's processes are a little bit different. But I guarantee you're going to see results, and you're going to see results really quickly, and once you get the hang of it, it's going to be a no-brainer. It's going to be a piece of cake. So it does seem overwhelming at first. Definitely start small and then build up to it.
And another one is, will this also work on desktops and Toughbooks and how do you handle multiple platforms like BlackBerry and Windows Mobile?
Okay.
Or what's your recommendation, or how should I handle it?
So again, different environments are different. So a lot of organizations employ a bring your own device policy where their employees can bring a device to do their work on and access corporate databases and applications. And so that is kind of a corporate decision. But you know, when you've got a task to perform, so for example, thinking about asset management, you really want to be able to use a barcode scanner or an RFID scanner if you happen to be in an environment that's incorporating RFID. And so that's going to dictate what type of device you actually use. Speaking of, there are tools out there. Mobile Reach's Splitware Mobility Platform is one of them that operate cross-platform, and that can, if you've got a reason for building mobile applications that go across device, you're going to want to look at a platform that's like ours, or where you can build applications cross-platform, because that's going to be key, especially if you've got folks that are doing different tasks, and they may need to use a barcode scanner for one of them, and they may need to use a smartphone or a tablet for something else.
Okay, hey everybody, there's more questions coming in, but we're going to end this because we don't want to run over this hour. We will get back to all of you. One question here is, can I have this deck that we're getting a lot? And we will probably be posting this deck up on our website or at YouTube or something like that, so you'll have access to it in one way or another. And then I also want to cover that we will be doing another webinar here What we did last time was building mobile apps in minutes. We just covered the mobile workflow, and the next one will be very, very focused on native mobile apps. So I don't know if you're going to talk about native versus the web there, or if it's just going to talk about native, but there'll probably be some mention of how they differ, obviously. Anyway, that is it. I want to thank everybody for your time and your patience and your questions, and we will be shooting you an email and get back to each of you with your questions, and we will also be letting you know about the next webinar. And again, if you guys want to see more, if you want to see specifically mobile reach stuff, just let us know, and we'll be happy to schedule a demo. We'll actually, what she showed you was not a live product, obviously. We'll be happy to show you what she showed you in a live fashion and take you through it. So anyway, I just want to thank you, Nasrin, and thank you everybody else, and we will talk to you soon. We really appreciate your time and attention. Thank you. Bye-bye.